County Commissioners, this is our Wednesday edition, July 23rd, 2023. Our final item on our week's agenda is the work session with the Lane Stabilization Center update. We have Health and Human Services Director Eve Gray with us, Brittany DeLasso, our Behavioral Health Project Manager, Lauren Blythe, our Director of Operations, Ann Davies, welcoming us from Mars, as it appears. Welcome back, Ann. Appreciate you back being here. And we have Kathy also Suter with us, and obviously our board County Administrator, Mr. Mokryski, to discuss this important item. So who wants to lead us off on this particular item? And if you nod heads and introduce one another, you can start whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm happy to open and then hand it over to the content experts here. So we have had multiple, maybe even many, public discussions on the Stabilization Center as a strategic priority for Lane County. So what this presentation is about is that we had entered way back in October, I believe, a purchase and sale agreement for a property on International Way. And that purchase and sale agreement was extended several times for the purpose of completing due diligence on that property, assuring that it could be a good use of taxpayer dollars and a good opportunity for partnership with Peace Health and an inpatient psychiatric unit. So after all of those many months, the team is coming back today to update you all and the public about the status of that due diligence effort, what research we have done, what findings we have done, and also responding to, I'll do my best off the cuff to respond to a variety of questions that we've received or a desire for clarification, but certainly would like all of that from you as well so that we are responding in public to as many of the public's questions as possible before you all would make a decision on the actual purchase of the property. So with that, I think I'm handing it over to Brittany DeLasso, who is our project manager for the Stabilization Center, who's going to run us down history lane a little bit, just to remind us of how we got here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eve. Yeah, we wanted to remind the public and remind you all, this is content we have brought specifically to the board multiple times, but it's good to be grounded in where we've come from and how we are where we are today. So as a reminder, we've been looking for a location and had a few potentials for a few years now. The primary criteria we've been considering is around accessibility, thinking about centrality within the Lane County region, with the goal of being within a 30-minute drive of 90% or more of Lane County residents, which tends to land us in the Eugene-Springfield area. Also considering different access points via bus transportation, people walking in, people being brought in by loved ones, perhaps needing to even bring in an RV if they're coming from the Florence area or Oak Ridge or beyond and needing to camp out while a loved one is receiving services. So really wanting to ensure we find a location that allows for easy access and also the space to accommodate folks coming in many different ways. Also thinking about access for our law enforcement and mobile crisis partners, looking at proximity to the jail and to the hospital, which we anticipate being key partners in this work, already have been key partners in this work. And then looking at a space that's large enough to accommodate the new and exciting direction in partnering with Peace Health with a co-located facility. And Eve will remind us all a little bit of the why and where that work comes from also. And then lastly, criteria, of course, is always looking at cost of property and potential renovation. We did look at, I think it was about 36 properties over the past couple of years, including many walking tours and then also just running through the criteria. We did assemble a site selection committee in years past that included folks from local cities as well as community members, partners, folks from law enforcement, some of those key stakeholders to help us review those many properties, running them through the criteria, and even up to recently really wanting to ensure that we are continuing to keep a current pulse on available locations to ensure we're pursuing the right path. And then the last piece of this work has really been centered around public engagement, which we've tried to ground this project as a whole in public engagement anytime that we can, in recognition that this is a new level of care and a new build, so we have a clean slate to actually allow the public and future consumers and utilizers of the services to drive the work, not just getting a stamp of approval after the fact, but actually inviting input along the way. So that's been a really high priority for this work, and specific to the identification of the property, again, that site selection committee that has weighed in. We have our executive steering committee that has broad representation of community members that has had a lot of visibility into this process. And then we've also hosted listening sessions, ran a survey that secured over 500 participants, and then some town halls. And the survey and the listening sessions in particular did ask community members questions about some of this criteria to ensure what we were measuring as important really aligned with their values too. So that's been an ongoing process throughout that brings us to today.
And we did, just on the public engagement side specific to this site, I believe we hosted 5 meetings with neighbors. 3 of them were open to a broad swath of neighbors, and we tried to get contact information for as many, particularly businesses. There are a lot of businesses around this area, sending that invitation out broadly. There were 2 of the meetings that were closed and specifically for the immediate neighbors adjacent to the property, where we could have more in-depth conversation and more personalized attention. So that is the public engagement primarily that we have done on this particular property.
Yeah. Thank you. Back to you.
Oh, back to me. Okay, so we had long envisioned the Stabilization Center as a place where individuals could come in who were in behavioral health crisis, receive stabilization, which is short-term, usually less than 24 hours, but up to 5 days of stabilization services, which is more than adequate for the majority of people who experience behavioral health crisis, and make sure that they are reintegrated back into the community without having to access emergency room, hospital services, or jail services, which we all know at times becomes the default location for people in behavioral health crisis. So that has been a vision. I think that I said at a Board of Commissioners meeting I don't know, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Wouldn't it be just amazing if we could co-locate this facility with a new inpatient behavioral health unit? Because I knew that that Peace Health was on the lookout for another location, and ended up getting a call from Peace Health going, remember how you said that thing? We have an opportunity. So Peace Health had identified this particular property on International Way as ideal for their inpatient psychiatric unit. It was, however, too big and too expensive for them to purchase on their own for just their needs. So they asked about a partnership. And could we do a public-private partnership to make this site feasible and to bring a behavioral health campus that is one of the largest and most comprehensive anywhere in the state? With, of course, the connections model. We went with, this is a new model for the state of Oregon, not new for the nation, but it will be the highest level stabilization center that exists within the state, really doing what law enforcement and the hospital system has been asking us to do throughout this entire process, which is serve as the place where we can divert people from where they don't belong to a therapeutic, trauma-informed environment where they can receive treatment on admission for whatever is happening in terms of their behavioral health condition. And of course, running also an urgent care, a 24/7 urgent care. You don't have to be at the most heightened level, which today is so often people get sicker and sicker and sicker before they can access care, and then it becomes an emergency or a crisis. We want to make sure that we are also providing that opportunity for individuals who are not yet in a crisis, but know that they're headed in the wrong direction. So this is the vision here for this partnership. Every level of care will be available on this same campus for behavioral health services in a model. I think there is not another quite like it anywhere in the state. So very exciting opportunity for us.
So Lauren Blythe, Director of Operations here in place of David Ward, our capital planning facilities manager. So in terms of property due diligence, that really kicked off back in October when we were last met with the board, and the board directed staff at that time to sign or enter into a purchase and sale agreement for the property in question in Springfield. It's already been mentioned that we looked at over 30 properties. One of those that was got a fair amount of our attention was at the MLK campus, but that location is not suitable for a co-location and also has some accessibility challenges, particularly on game days. The due diligence progress that's been made since October at a high level has consisted of a geotechnical engineering services, essentially a feasibility survey, phase 1 environmental site assessment, HRSA and NEPA analysis, which is the Health Resources and Service Administration and National Environmental Policy Act, ALTA and NSPS for American Land Title Association and National Society of Professional Surveyors, Land Use and Planning Services, which is a transportation study and a traffic impact analysis, additional evaluation analysis around traffic, utility maps and easement review, and then a phase 2 environmental site assessment. The phase 1, as we know, or has been mentioned in the past, this property has been utilized since the 30s, since the 1930s, as an orchard, a filbert orchard. So the phase 1 environmental site assessment, there were no negative findings on that, but because of the historical use of that location, they recommended that a phase 2 environmental study be done, and that is outstanding. We're still in progress, awaiting the results of that. Other findings, with all of that analysis and information gathering, so there were essentially no recognized environmental conditions in the phase 1 study. The transportation study concluded that there were no off-site mitigation needs resulting from the planned use of the location of our project in addition to the Peace Health project.
And can I add to that one just a little bit?
Yeah.
So one of the things that helps us, knowing that transportation is a particular concern in this area, particularly the Gateway interchange. One of the things that helped us and the type of facilities that we are building is the 24/7 nature of them. So even though we are bringing between the two facilities more than 300 staff, those staff are not all coming at the same time. Often when you have 24/7 facilities, you also schedule your shifts to start outside of the normal rush hour. So for example, at the hospital, shifts start at 7 a.m. That's a very, very common time for day shift to start because night shifters have a real hard time staying up after 7:30 a.m. So starting at the normal kind of business hours time is usually not ideal for these types of facilities. So Connections as well as Peace Health were able to work together with the individual who did the transportation study to recognize that a lot of the greatest impact will not be during the highest traffic hours. And that really helps with this type of facility design, which may not be true for other developments that would occur in the area that might have more normal business hours.
One of the findings of the transportation or the traffic analysis is that the traffic volume now is less than it was years ago when Symantec and some other businesses were in operation in that vicinity. The site is located within the floodplain, and the part of the analysis was to determine what efforts would need to be taken to mitigate that for construction. And those findings consisted of needing to provide 3 to 4 feet of structural fill to raise the base elevation of the facility, excavation for stormwater detention zones to balance that structural fill. Understand as you build up, you also need to build down and create these detention zones. Constructing stormwater drainage outfall to the Babylon Brook area, also known as Maple Island
For the little
Slope,
fishies.
on the northeast side of the property. And then lastly, because of the elevation, a wastewater pump system would need to be developed to connect to the public sanitary lines, which is not abnormal or not unusual for facilities in that area, also in the floodplain. The study also called out the need for 2 access points on the west side of the property along Sports Way and on the south side of the property along International Way.
And I'll just pepper in. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Because that's what I do.
Yeah.
The access points, there are the 2 access points. On International Way will likely be the access to the inpatient behavioral health unit. On Sports Way is where we are envisioning the access to the stabilization center. So that has been another concern from neighbors, is that all of the traffic for both facilities would come from the same location. That is not how our architects are currently envisioning the site. And certainly we would be happy to meet with any neighbors who wanted to see the updates on how the particular facilities are looking with the site maps where we are in architectural design, so that they can see where traffic would be coming and going, and that the stabilization center is a bit tucked back, and with the entrance more to the north of many of the businesses that are on International Way in order to reduce the impact there.
It also helps reduce the amount, I'm peppering, salting peppering. It also reduces the impact on the services coming off of International Way, because we're going to bring the services in from Sports Way, which is going to be more cost effective for us because it's a shorter distance, and there's plenty of capacity there. There are some concerns along the International Way, so
In terms of utility capacity.
yeah. So that's a helpful thing that I've learned.
Thank you.
So next steps in terms of due diligence, as I mentioned, the phase 2 environmental site assessment is in process. We have a memorandum of understanding with Peace Health in terms of how the property is going to be divided if we get to the point where it is purchased. And that's needs to be finalized. In terms of annexation, there is a development issues or development
Initiation.
development and initiation meeting scheduled here in a few weeks. Of course, if this were to move forward and be directed by the board to continue this process, we'd have to finalize the purchase of the property, the annexation piece of it, and conveyance of the 5.8 acres to Peace Health.
And I know that another concern that we have heard is around the concern that this is a sizable area that Springfield had envisioned being on the tax rolls, and a concern that because a public agency and a nonprofit agency are purchasing these parcels, that would take them off the tax rolls. So what's unique about this project is that it is like the ultimate public-private partnership where it is public, nonprofit, and for-profit agencies all involved. For-profit agencies will be running both of these facilities, which will leave them on the tax rolls. And Lauren, I think you brought an estimate of what the taxable or those values would be on an annual basis.
Yes, so we worked with our assessment and taxation department to come up with a projected rough estimate based on what we anticipate being the makeup of the two facilities. And so based on that, the estimated tax revenue combined for both facilities would be about $1.9 million. Of course,
A year?
a year. Of course, distributed to the various districts within that area, presuming annexation and the again the makeup of those.
So is that assuming a full taxation or a discounted taxation for the entities?
There was no discussion of a discounted taxation. These would be presumably taxed at the same rate as if they were fully profit or, not the partnership.
Great, thanks for that clarification.
No, we included a map visualization. I think we've presented this to the board in the past. This is the 17.9 acres off of International Way. Sportsway, you can see to the west, runs north-south, but then jogs or would jog eastward towards the west edge of the property.
And
A question from the vice chair, please.
So is that the easement for the road then, those two white lines I see right there?
Yeah.
Right above
On
202
off
Square.
Sportsway?
Mhm.
Yeah, gotcha.
And we'd be bringing the utilities in.
Yeah, on Google Earth, you can see the utilities are already right about there.
That's right, yeah.
And since we're looking at this particular site, when we were first looking at the property, we went, 17 acres, that's more than we need. And so we were thinking about, would we have excess? What could we do with that excess property? And as we have done our due diligence, which has involved the architects really looking at siting the facilities and then thinking about floodplain mitigation. This is a big deal on this particular site. So there's a fair amount of a buffer that is needed for the purpose of mitigating the floodplain. And that actually, as it turns out, makes this parcel about the size that we need when we thought it was going to be too much. So we are not anticipating any additional development beyond the two facilities on this site due to that flood risk if you get closer to the river.
And we're happy to provide drawings on that because we can show you the different easements. There's also the power lines running through there that require easements back.
Sorry, how would we provide those drawings for the public to see?
Well, I could show the diagrams showing the easement locations.
Are they gonna be
I
in the
think
next
we can-
packet? Are they gonna be in the next packet?
They can be.
Yeah, some of those may be, there's quite a bit of detail that we'll be including in the next packet. It's all of the findings from the due diligence, the geotechnical survey, the environmental assessment, and the traffic impact analysis. And forewarning, if you get those, don't hit print or hit print selectively because probably 600 to 700 pages.
What's your printer address again, Lauren?
I think the last piece here, hoping you all can see this all right, this is just since we're checking in, we're also touching base on the anticipated timeline after the last many months of due diligence and where we are. And I'll speak high level to this and invite Kathy to chime in as well. But this is really based off of some rough estimates from our architects and what they know is what typically happens and how they've mapped this out. And the Zoom bar is covering, that's just a zooming in a little bit of the design process specifically, but highlighting where due diligence has fallen and program verification. And Kathy could speak a bit to how we've been creatively utilizing the architects to still move forward what we can so that we can fully hit the ground running at this next milestone. And then recognizing that there is the formality of engaging the design contract with those architects, which we've been waiting to do until the property is confirmed. And then the design timeline, which includes schematic, design development, construction documents, and then of course the actual construction. So this puts us eyeballing around the fall of 2028.
All dependent on funding being in place at the time of construction. So that's really what.
Yes, as I haven't read up there.
X
just
on there.
Yeah.
We really do need full funding in place when we start construction and sign off with the contract.
And currently, we have $35 million. It is our intent to build a $35 million facility, and we will work with the architects to make sure that we value engineer and meet the commitment to our legislators who worked really, really hard to get us a tremendous amount of funding for this facility, knowing that the intent was that it was shovel-ready. So we will be working within the budget that we have.
We have the architects working on that right now with Connections. Connections has been given the program details, and I believe Linda's working on that now, so it's actively going forward.
One other little note around funding is also making sure we're thinking strategically about operational funding so that we know that we can continue to run this program well after it's been built. Be mindful of that point.
Very
Yes.
important.
There's a lot of work ahead with rate setting there.
So we picked our architectural team in February. We have an A team, a really great team of architects and designers, and they're excited about this project. So we've been able to keep them moving forward very slowly, and there's a lot of excitement to get going. I'm just developing the full contract, because we broke this project into smaller packages to keep them engaged, to keep pieces moving forward for due diligence. So we are hoping to begin design in earnest, because we haven't been designing really yet. It's all been evaluation and assessment in September, October.
And a couple of other items that are top of mind that I can speak to, knowing that these questions have come up. So I already mentioned the 300 plus jobs. There have been concerns about are we bringing the jobs that we need to this area of Springfield, given the plan for campus industrial and the wages that we're looking for. You know, I think most of us recognize that that healthcare is very expensive, and part of that is because we really try to pay living wage and better within the healthcare industry. So just over 300 living wage and better jobs being brought to that area within Springfield. Additionally, there's been question about the campus industrial area and kind of what was the vision for this area by the city. This will be the third major healthcare facility on that industrial way corridor. So it is not the thing that is making the shift on International Way. The area for the new rehabilitation hospital that Peace Health is building, it was zoned campus industrial and was rezoned by the city in order to support the building of that hospital on International Way. And then there was an interpretation of the zoning On the Pacific Source property, they own a large building there on International Way to build a large day center for older adults to provide comprehensive healthcare services. So those already were in process before we identified and began moving on these particular sites. Very similar in terms of the healthcare types of healthcare services provided, and really it is a continuation of a shift rather than the initiation of a shift on International Way.
I do have one more slide for you
Okay,
too.
sorry.
Yeah, you're great.
Oh, okay. One more slide for me. So capital funding, I mentioned, $35 million is where we are all in. Huge thanks to Mr. Adams and Vanessa, our lobbying team, around the efforts that they did to bring this to the attention of our legislators. And I will say, from that point, from bringing it to attention, the speaker and really all of our legislative delegation was 100% on board, recognizing the significance of this project, not just in our community, but in the entire state. It didn't take a whole lot of convincing beyond, hey, we have this cool project, but it wouldn't have happened had you not brought it to their attention. And then the super siting of the facility, certainly there has been concern about potential delays with land use appeals related to this particular facility being sited where it is. Again, our legislative delegation heard about that as a concern and did embed super siting for our facility as well as a number of residential facilities throughout the state to address the challenges statewide in siting these really critical behavioral health facilities within our state. So the delegation was very impressed with this project and came with a ton of support for us, and certainly huge thanks to our delegation for all of the advocacy that they did.
Great, thank you very much. I know we don't have a lot of time left. We have about a half an hour, and I know there's some robust discussion and questions that are probably going to ensue. So I'll open it up and to the board. I know Commissioner Farr is absent, so there's the four of us remaining. Who wants to start? If there's any questions or discussion at all. Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Traeger.
Just get us kicked off. I mean, I don't have questions because this project has been so thoughtfully and fully vetted and brought to us and iterative, as well as across departments. I mean, there was an incredible meeting last year when Senator Wyden was in town, where our DA and our sheriff also expressed their enthusiasm for us moving forward, for this partnership, for this facility. It is no longer a theoretical, what if we had a stabilization center? This is a very real project, site, funding. The confluence is it's all happening. And it is incredibly exciting to me to think about the legacy project that this is and the opportunity that we have as a board to be able to deliver on something that we have consistently named as a top priority plus because of this opportunity with the partnership with Peace Health, and to be able to deliver the services that our community has gone without for so long, to ease the burden on our public safety system and our emergency medical system, will only serve every constituent in this county and our own ability to provide services that people need and deserve. And so I'm just very excited that we've gotten to this point and how thoroughly and thoughtfully we've done it. And I have no more questions or discussion. I'm just ready for Tuesday.
Thank you. Commissioner?
I too am really excited to see it actually coming to fruition. What's also really exciting to me is seeing Springfield and Lane County slowly over time becoming the largest medical healthcare hub south of the Portland region. I had no idea that it would bring in so much tax dollars for the local districts. That's also really exciting because we don't often get large businesses coming into our area that bring in considerable tax dollars like that. So from an economic development perspective, that's also quite exciting. And I know that you've done significant amount of outreach, and there may still be some questions from the community because this is a newer concept for our area. And that's to be expected, and I'm pleased that you'll continue that effort as the development goes forward. 'Cause it's, I know, our intent as Lane County to be good partners with all agencies and the residents and businesses in the area. So continuing that outreach, hopefully the city of Springfield will also get this very similar kind of presentation. I'd like those folks to be as informed as we are as to where we're going, how we're doing it, and being open to feedback so that we can all celebrate this together when we finally get going.
Yes. We will absolutely have a comprehensive presentation during the annexation process at kind of as that marches through and bringing that forward at the appropriate times.
Vice Chair.
Yes, this is exciting stuff. What was the general consensus of the neighbors when you had those meetings? You said you had the meetings. What, people on board, not on board? What were their main concerns?
I think there's a mix. So certainly the healthcare related neighbors are enthusiastic because Pacific Source, Trillium, Peace Health are all neighbors right on this road. I think there were a number of people who were open to listening, bringing forward questions, and there have been a select number of neighbors who have been opposed. And I spoke to a number of the concerns that I have heard from those neighbors, and how we have tried to respond, including where the entrance to the site is, assuring that we didn't mention all of the landscaping that's around in order to provide buffers and in between us and some of the neighbors, making sure that, of course, we have a comprehensive security plan to be patrolling and assuring that camps aren't being set up on our property, just as we do in all of the other properties that we own as Lane County. So all of these ways that we are being good neighbors. Admittedly, there are some neighbors who are not convinced. And that I don't know that there's a behavioral health facility built in this state that has 100% neighbor support, at least going in.
Excuse me, he's still
Yeah.
got questions.
Yeah. And so a couple more technical questions. So no traffic work needs to be done at this point. How close is, say, the Beltline intersection from, I've heard concerns from people in Springfield that the intersection, Beltline and Gateway, is getting close to, they call it being broke, which is going to take some major improvements. Did they say how close this facility might put that intersection to that? Because one of the concerns was this might not be the straw that broke the camel's back, but it's getting closer there. So would we ever be held, or would we ever be responsible for helping with any of that traffic control through there? What's that? What was that?
The Chick-fil-A, have you ever seen how much traffic is going into that?
And the car wash right on the corner.
Vice Chair, the traffic impact analysis goes into quite a bit of detail. I'm not intimately familiar enough with it to be able to answer.
But it'll be in the packet.
It'll be in the packet
Perfect.
for next week. Again, in talking though with the engineering firm that conducted the survey, they reiterated a couple times that the volume of traffic now is less than it was years ago when there were when Symantec was there, and I'm not sure if that was at the same time it was Royal Caribbean or Pacific Source, but and certainly they have I think they have numbers around what those what triggers what, but that should be covered in the survey.
Gotcha. Okay. So when this goes in, it'll get us close to where it was. We're kind of thinking
Close to where it was in
the
terms of
traffic wise.
volume.
Yeah.
Don't know.
With
I don't,
Symantec.
the relativity of that, I'm not sure.
I can certainly review the study and highlight the answer for you.
Yeah, and I mean, it's great that stuff's going to be in the packet because I think those are kind of those technical questions that some people don't have answered yet that I would like to make sure that to get as many people on board as we can and doing our due diligence that way. So, thanks, Lauren.
I think just reinforcing that a 24/7 facility rather than a facility that operates on normal business hours is going to be an easier, it's going to be easier from an impact perspective on the traffic, so that it's spreading out the traffic volumes maybe better than other types of facilities that could come into this area, which would bring a big volume, you know, from 7:30 to 8:30 and from 4:30 to 5:30.
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Good?
Good.
You had a comment?
Just a quick follow-up. I remember when, oh my gosh, the name of our provider just flew right out of my head. When Connections presented to us about comparable facilities they've built all over the country, but particularly regionally up in Washington, the one that's closest to. And we asked the question about the business park neighbors, because one of them is in a really similar business park. And they said they had a lot of the same kind of concerns and pushback, but that since the facility has been built, they've had nothing but good relationships and good feedback. Have we been able to, or has Connections been able to provide connections to business owner, neighbor to neighbor for the local folks that still have questions about what kind of a neighbor a facility like this is, so that, because there is nothing like peer connection, we know that in every part of the system, to really have people listen differently.
Yeah, we did ask that probably around the time that they presented that information, because I think we actually proactively wanted to come to talk with you all with that in hand. I think we can ask again. They weren't opposed to it, but they were very new. And so they're trying to protect those relationships and the traction that's building first and foremost. And so, and that was just a bit of an ask. So I think we could absolutely return.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Good, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. Obviously, everybody in this room knows this facility is needed, and everybody in this room's done a super job at getting us to the finish line, almost to the finish line where we're at. And, there's still a ways to go, and unfortunately, I bear the burden of most of the opposition on this project and to represent them fairly. So, obviously, we still have some concerns. I think a lot of the good things that we're already answering, Vice Chair had a good point. I think Commissioner Trieger had a good point, and you're talking about engaging folks to understand how, like, the Kirkland facility works. And I think it would be really prudent at this time because, I mean, if I can just be a little frank here, I think we have a little bit of a public relations issue on our hands with the city of Springfield, the mayor and its city councilors, and the business people around this area. So I think there's some repair work that needs to be done, and I think that should be part of our due diligence process before we sign on the dotted line to purchase this property. That's my opinion. So I think that in light of Commissioner Trieger's comments, I think perhaps, Brittany, if you could arrange, or maybe we could invite some of the oppositional parties to have a county-sponsored field trip to Kirkland to see for themselves, eyes on property, having a couple of folks around there who are positive about the experience, and then have a couple who are not positive about the experience. I think a balanced presentation on site, if they can make that, would be really helpful in this public relations arm that we need to kind of repair. I do want to also, we've talked about this, but and the public needs to know that the way in which we did this project, I think we overstepped a little bit. I think the perception of a super siting is almost equivalent to eminent domain, and I think that has the optics in the public that that's the way it was. So even though all the enthusiasm I hear, and rightfully so, around this table, there's still some folks out there that kind of look at the government that says, well, you know, everybody else needs to comply with land use laws except the government when it's find itself convenient. So that's a public relations idea that I think we need to work on in this particular situation. I'm happy that the full taxation, that was a big item. I'm happy to see that if indeed it is full taxation, it is full taxation on these properties. That helps. Additionally, members of this board have, in meetings past, have articulated that building in the floodplain is never a good idea, and I'm not sure why those opinions now seem to have changed. And then Director Gray, you said that this is the third major medical facility in this area. There has been two because they were business park exceptions. That was through a joint meeting with Springfield and Lane County. But the identifier and the reason and economic vision of this was still campus industrial. And if I can speak for one of my constituents in particular, the Kelly Richardson of Richardson Sports, moved off of West First Avenue for many of the very reasons that we're facing today with some of our properties, and the extension of people camping and the mischief and mayhem that goes with that. And, you know, in light of our conversation yesterday with the Navigational Center, we still, as a county, need to be a little more responsible with our periphery of our properties. And I think that fear, and for lack of better words, PTSD from where Mr. Richardson came from to where he is now, has probably got him a little hypersensitive to this facility next door to him. So I think that that's another public relations kinds of area we need to look at. The thing too that you mentioned about our $35 million budget, this concerns me greatly, because if you're going to put 4 feet of structural rock on approximately 10 acres of property, that doesn't come with a small price tag.
It won't be that size.
Then we have to deal with the annexation and the building of curbs, gutters, and streets from Sportsway, which is about 150 feet. I mean, that's another ding to our budget. The question that I'm sure the International Way residents are going to have is, does the front access to the behavioral health hospital, does it have a through access to the facility behind us? Or is there a building that cuts that access off so people are required to go down Sportsway without having a secondary access through the International Way outlet? So those kinds of questions would be really good in the public if it would be included in the packet, some of the design, because in your head you have a vision of what this thing's going to look like with, as you said, Director Gray, with, you know, mitigation for landscape and all that, but the people that I'm representing don't have that vision in their heads. So I really think we need to get those kinds of things to them. Going forward, I think, you know, I've covered most of what I want to help. I think the people I represent still have some heartburn with Peace Health not being overly transparent with the 75 acres of land they have of developable property around them. I think Peace Health needs to come to the table and help us with this public relations issue. I think they have a responsibility to do that. I think the way the public sees that is Peace Health perhaps is bullying their way into the campus industrial zone unnecessarily because they have 75 acres of their own property that they haven't figured out yet. I understand from Mr. Adams' conversation yesterday that this is a 100-year plan, but I think, again, the people that are concerned about this need to know what the plan is. Not just saying, well, we have 75 acres and you don't need to know what we're doing with it and we're going to do what we want to in other industrial areas. So I think just as I'm trying to represent those people who have asked me to represent their concerns here in this meeting, going forward, I think we have some repair on our relationship. I want to also look at the traffic study from SACO that we'd mentioned in previous meetings, and has that public traffic study been shared with the city municipality of Springfield? Springfield has an MOU with the Oregon Department of Transportation to do annual traffic studies to that intersection, and in there's a clause of any other, says here that in addition to excessive traffic queuing based on actual surveyed condition, the city will in good faith rely upon ongoing and future traffic studies to determine what above events would trigger that. And I'm wondering how long we've had this traffic study, if we've included Springfield so that they can actually use this information to quell their concerns about this understanding that they have with the Department of Transportation. And if we've been good neighbors in that respect, and if we haven't, we need to work on that. So I think the county also, in this plan, before, in the board packet for next week, needs to have a committed and prescribed sideboards of security. You mentioned there's security. And I think there needs to be a pretty thorough as we can at this point, sideboards to how we're going to make sure that's secure. When Brittany mentioned the fact that someone could come from Florence to help a family member whether, and they need to camp somewhere, obviously, where are they going to camp? I mean, we're not putting camping spots on this spot, I assume, which is good. So people are going to ask that and want to know the answer to that question as well. And then I just think, too, with this site, I do know there was another site that was in consideration, but the cost was, it was a Chad Drive site. And I'm wondering, just with all of the floodplain mitigation, the sportsway construction, the $7.2 million cost for the initial property, if those additions to all of that make another site equally as feasible, but shovel-ready right now. I mean, that Chad Drive site mentioned in meetings prior that perhaps there was a parking issue, but as I know, the city of Eugene and the city of Springfield has a lot less parking requirements on new construction than they've ever had before. So I'm not really seeing, in my mind and what I know, that that's a closed door, a definite no on that site. So I think that site should be also reconsidered, or at least explained in the packet better for the public. And then the last thing I want to mention is if, in fact, you know, this is all going to go through and the board's going to approve it and we end up building this and we end up, you know, having to work with some people in that community to kind of repair relationships, is there maybe a mix of this facility that we can use as a win-win? An example, could this medical type facility be combined with some sort of sports economic or other kind of tangent economic kind of connection that would actually, a new person would move into this campus area that we could attract, that would actually benefit from this, directly benefit from this particular facility there, that wouldn't necessarily be a medical facility, like a sports injury complex or sports rehab or some sort of connection like that that we haven't even thought about yet that could be helpful to the campus industrial zone. So that's a lot on the table that I put on there, but I didn't have much time, and we don't have a lot of time left in this, but I wanted to put that out there for the public to know that we've articulated those concerns on their behalf, and I do think we still have some more due diligence to do prior to the county signing that we're going to buy this property. I think we owe that not only to us, to be fair, because of what could potentially happen down the road that could delay this property development, but just to be good, to repair some relationships with the city of Springfield and who the people I represent. Thank you for your ear.
Thank you. And I will not be here next week, but what I will do is listen back to what you brought forward and pass on talking points to my colleagues so that we can respond to those particular items, many of which we have addressed, and also acknowledge that not everyone is feeling on board in the same way. So we will do our best to respond to those items.
We have the best people here to do that. That's what I appreciate about y'all. Thank you. Anything else for the good of the order on this matter? Mr. Mokryski, anything to weigh in? No? Mr. Adams? Nope. Everybody's got a shaking head. All right, well, good. I so appreciate the time and the continued effort. This is a facility that we all know is needed, and I know we're going to get there somewhere, but we're going to get there with a win-win on both sides, I'm sure. So appreciate you very much. This is a regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners is now adjourned.